for any parent, I'm sure you would be the first to raise your hand if I asked you, are you committed to making sure that you do everything in your power to escalate your children's ability to maximize their ceiling of potential in life? It turns out that playing sports may be the ideal way to accomplish this goal. According to athleteassessments.com, 95% of Fortune 500 executives participated in some form of high school athletics. Dan Clouser knows all about youth sports and the benefits of youth sports development and leadership in youth sport athletes. He founded and ran a youth sport organization for 30 years called the Berkshire Baseball and Softball Club, which was later rebranded as the Big Vision Foundation. They ran tournaments and a 130-acre sports complex. Dan loved every second of what he did, teaching kids the value of leadership, community service, and paying it forward. He thought he was going to die doing what he loved. However, in August of 2020, Dan and his wife Sandy sold their house and all of their stuff in favor of traveling the world in an RV and with their golden retriever. Now, working around Dan's schedule as a speaker, they can often be found volunteering or sailing the seas. Clouser joined me this week to have a conversation about youth sport development and the importance of living every minute of every day to maximize the moment of potential, productivity, and promise. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Yeah, Dan, I'm looking forward to having a comprehensive conversation about baseball in your life, buddy. So if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn about your experience in youth sports and everything in between. Great to see you this morning, and thanks for a few minutes, buddy.
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Absolutely. Now, Dan, I know that you've spent more than 30 years running a youth sport organization where you're focused on baseball and then softball, but you wanted sort of a change of scenery and a change of life, buddy. So I'm wondering if you could tell me about your experience in youth sports and how you made the life pivot as well.
Yeah, I mean, sports has just been in my blood my entire life. So when I was only 20 years old, I started the organization, and at first it wasn't necessarily, it was more about me continuing to play baseball than it was anything else. And then as I got older and started getting into coaching, it just morphed into something much bigger than what I ever thought it was. And once I started coaching kids, I realized the importance of, what it was to give back, which is something that my mom instilled in me at a very young age. So it was, again, it was just in my blood to be out there in sports and giving back. And the way that I could do it was by, not just teaching these kids how to play the game, but teaching life lessons through the game and, making them really understand that there's life beyond their baseball and softball careers. And, one of the things that my wife and I have been able to see during this new journey of ours is being able to connect with some of those old players that are scattered throughout the country and see what they're doing now in their adult lives. And, you asked about the pivot from running that organization, literally for 60% of my life, to walking away from it and selling all our stuff and, moving into an RV. And it was not an easy decision. It was, something that a couple solo trips back in 2019 that I took by car led me to do. My mom traveled when she was in her mid 40s. And I guess that turned out to be in my blood as well. Because when I took those 2 solo trips, one was to Dallas, Texas, and Louisiana and back to Pennsylvania. The other was to Orlando, Florida, and back to Pennsylvania. It really kind of hit me as to why my mom did what she did. And it also gave me a newfound inspiration to continue to write. And it was really almost as though God was speaking to me, saying it was time for a new chapter. And again, it wasn't an easy decision because the work that we were doing in the organization was very fulfilling. But what I can accomplish through my writing and publishing more books can reach an even greater sphere, so to speak, than what I was doing in the youth sports industry.
Yeah, Dan, you missed 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. And you tell me that you say that you're living proof that we don't have to live to the societal standards that are laid out for us. But is there telling about your life philosophy on life and how your perspective on life has really changed to give you more life freedom and flexibility?
Yeah, I think society creates this kind of norm that you should do. You go to high school, you graduate, you go right into college, putting yourself in an enormous amount of debt, and then you work that 9-to-5 job. And hopefully, if you live long enough to actually retire, you may have 10 or 11 years to really enjoy life. And I don't think that's necessarily the way that God wants us to live. I think we should really, be out there living and enjoying a life. Our society is so consumer driven, and we're trained to just accumulate so much stuff. And one of the things my wife and I found as we were downsizing and selling all of our stuff was how liberating it was to really get rid of that. And just the 2 of us for the last 10 to 15 years, probably since our kids had last moved out, it was just 2 of us living in this big 3,500 square foot house. And with all this crap that we accumulated over the years, and now we're in a just about a 300 square foot RV traveling the country, and all of our stuff is right here. And we've found that it's so much more fulfilling to gather experiences and be able to live in the moment than it is to accumulate all that stuff. I told you before we started recording, we're actually up in Troy, New York right now. Our one grandson just started his freshman year of college. We were able to get up here. We're going to have lunch with him. We saw him last night. We're going to see him play baseball tonight. And that's something we never would have been able to do had we still been, living that societal norm, like, have this big house, this big yard, and just keep grinding until you die. So I think that through the pandemic, there's a little bit of a shift of people understanding and putting importance more on experiences and getting outdoors and, kind of experiencing God's beauty that's right here in front of us that a lot of times we take for granted. But I still think we have a ways to go. So, that's my philosophy, is to just, rethink why we're here and what we're existing for, and stop going out and just buying and accumulating stuff. Find those experiences that fulfill you.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, one of the philosophies that I live by is maximizing every moment. And for me, it's important to celebrate all the wins in life. So I'm curious to ask you, how do you celebrate prosperity in your own life there, buddy?
Again, I think it's just, being in the moment and understanding, that really the only thing that we're guaranteed is this particular moment that we're in right now. You and I could jump off this podcast and walk out the door and breathe our last breath, and it's all over at that point, and we have no idea. So I think really just understanding how important it is to just cherish every single moment that we have, um, is probably the best way to kind of fulfill your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on your experience in youth sports, Dan, I'm curious to ask you about what do you think is the key to fostering a commitment to leadership for young people in today's society?
Service. I think servant leadership is the way to go. It's the way I always led. I always led from behind, so to speak, and putting those who I was leading, putting their best interests and what was best for them at the forefront of why I did things, even if it meant I was going to sacrifice a little bit. And I think teaching young people the importance of that, the importance of giving and servant leadership, will make it a better world for sure. And I can speak again by example, because when I was younger, my mom did a lot of volunteer work. A product of me being her son was being dragged along to whatever volunteer project she was doing. So as I became an adult, it just seemed natural for me to want to serve others and want to give back. So I think servant leadership is definitely the best way to go for sure. And if we can instill that in our young people, I think we'll be able to give ourselves a pretty promising future.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, I originally went to school to become a sports reporter, and I have a journalism degree because I have a love of English and writing myself, and I know that you have written 2 books, my friend, and I know that writing also brings you a tremendous amount of passion and fulfillment. So tell me about the power of the books that you've written, what they're all about, and the type of fulfillment you get from writing as well.
Yeah, so writing again, it's something that's been in my blood for as long as I can remember. When I was really young, I just enjoyed writing. I enjoyed storytelling. My brother played on an adult soccer team, and when I was like 11 or 12 years old, I actually hand wrote out a weekly newsletter for his soccer team, and just really enjoyed seeing the players and their wives and girlfriends pass that newsletter around at a game and comment on it and talk about it. And it really fulfilled me. And I think the written word is, really a way to kind of preserve a legacy and to almost create a little bit of immortality, because long after I'm gone, my books will still exist and people will still be able to read some of the things that I wrote long after I pass away from this earth. And so that just stuck with me. So as I got older, I always had this desire, where I wanted to publish a book, and it took a long time. The first one took me over 12 years to write, and I published it in 2012, The Beauty of a Diamond Through the Eyes of a Coach. Actually realized it wasn't even really finished, so I decided to add about 10 chapters to it and republished it in 2021. So if you put all of that together, that book took probably about 20 years to write. But that was a lot about my coaching philosophy, about the philosophy of giving back, that it wasn't all about the wins and losses. And, teaching young coaches, or coaches of any age, really, again, the importance that they are in a child's life. And, they really do become a third parent in a child's life. And it's so much more than just about the trophies and the wins and the losses and the awards at the end of the season. It's about teaching these kids that, there's more to life than the game, and using that game to teach them life lessons, to teach them how to overcome failure, to teach them how to face adversity, and all that sort of stuff. So that's the first book. Again, it's The Beauty of a Diamond Through the Eyes of a Coach. And then the second one, which was just published this past May, is The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. And the subtitle is Many Random Thoughts from the Road. And that is really just a collection of what the subtitle says, Many Random Thoughts from the Road. So it's a collection of writings from about 6 months prior to us embarking on this RV journey, through the first 18 months of us actually being on this RV journey. And whether that's something that was triggered by the passing of a friend or the passing of a sibling or seeing a sunset or a sunrise on the beach, those were all part of that collection of those random thoughts from the road. And again, it really stresses the importance of what I said a little while ago about understanding the importance of living in the moment and being in the moment and cherishing that, understanding that, it is fleeting to us at that point. So that's kind of a pretty quick synopsis on the two books.
Yeah, absolutely. I know all of the hard work that goes into publishing a book. So publishing two of them must be gratifying for you, huh?
It is very gratifying. It's it's one of those things that until you do it and you get a time to kind of decompress a little bit and take a deep breath, and you look back and say, wow, I'm a published author now. Like that's one of a very small percentage of this world who have gone on and published a book. So it is very very gratifying and very fulfilling to do that. And I'm not done yet. I'm still writing. Like I said, The Journey of My Mother's Son, it's volume 1. God willing, it'll be part of a 4-book series that'll be coming out over the next couple of years. Again, just talking about different aspects of our travels. The next one that's being worked on now is called Many Little People, which will just talk about some of the incredible people that we've met in these travels, and how fulfilling it's been to be able to connect with like-minded people. Volume 3 is Many Little Places, which will just give a brief synopsis of some of the places that we've been to on these travels and the beauty that they offer, and some of these small, incredible communities that we have here in the U.S. And then the 4th one will just be a picture book called Many Little Pictures, which will just be a kind of a coffee table book of pictures that my wife and I have taken of again, just some of the amazing scenes that we've been able to experience on this journey.
Well, it's always important to have something to aspire to, so I certainly wish you well in publishing the rest of the series, Dan, but I want to know now, buddy, what have been some of your favorite adventures in the RV since you've embarked on this journey?
Well, so many people ask us that, and it's so tough to narrow it down because we've seen so many, beautiful places, and there's so much more to see yet, and so many places we've been to where we felt like we didn't spend enough time and we want to get back to. But I think the best thing has been, again, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is us just being able to connect with some of my old players, and even like what we're doing now, being able to, get up here to New York and see our grandson. So to be able to connect with, players who I hadn't seen in, some of them 10, 15 years or more. I mean, we connected with one of my old players in North Carolina, and we hadn't seen each other in probably close to 25 years. And it was just like, we'd never missed a beat. We connected with one of my old friends from high school in Wyoming, who again, we hadn't seen in probably 28 years, and just had a wonderful time with him and his wife when we were out there. So I think that, not any one of those moments, but all those moments encompassed together of being able to connect with those people, again, and be able to share that time. That's probably been the most special thing about this journey. For me, for sure. And I think I can probably speak for my wife a little bit too. That's been pretty special for her as well.
Yeah, authentic human connection is important, isn't it?
It sure is, especially after what we've just been through the past couple of years. Human connection is huge.
And yes, it makes the difference when you can talk to people in person and not through a computer screen, right?
You bet.
And Dad, tell me, I'm a big believer in personal growth and development. So, as you've been on this journey, how have you sort of reconnected with yourself and your wife as well? How did you keep the heartbeat of your life sort of humming along?
It has definitely been a spiritual journey for us, for sure. And I think, experiencing nature more than we ever have. I always enjoyed taking walks and hikes and stuff like that, but we've taken it to a new level during our travels here. And when you stand beside the Pacific Ocean and you really kind of understand how truly small we are in the grand scheme of things at that point. So I think just that perspective that we, we are just a tiny part of what this world has to offer, but yet we can make a huge impact on those that we interact with in those daily interactions and that human connection that we just talked about. So I think that's kind of been my biggest, spiritual growth throughout this, is just, understanding that even though on the grand scale, we're just, a blip on the radar in the universe, but on a personal level, we are massive to those that we interact with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a former sports administrator. You talked about earlier the positive benefits of playing youth sports, and I really think it's a harbinger of things to come if kids play youth sports, because it really has a tremendously positive impact on the rest of their lives. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, sports teach, teamwork. They teach overcoming adversity, overcoming failure, learning to get up again after you fail, and all those things transform into the business world. So when you start working for a business, or even if you're an entrepreneur and you're working, with yourself, you never can eliminate the fact that you are still part of a team. So I think the teamwork factor that sports teach is probably the biggest thing that benefits those young people as they grow into adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, I was personally born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy, and one of the reasons that I wanted to get into journalism is to become a sports reporter, buddy. And I'm always a big believer that you can either make your circumstances work for you, or you can work for your circumstances. So I'm curious to get your definition of what it means for you for diversity, equity, and inclusion for all. What does that mean to you, there, buddy?
I think it's just judging people by their content, what they're bringing to the table, not necessarily, what they look like or what, shortcomings they may have in life, but really sitting down and having a conversation with them and identifying them as a human being, regardless of what you might see on the exterior, really finding out what is inside of them. And that's one of the things that, in our organization, one of our young college employees at one time had mentioned to me that she had never worked in a more diverse environment than what we had there within our organization, because we literally had every type of, color, creed, religion, sexual orientation, represented. And it wasn't something that it happened organically, because we were just looking at interviewing the best person for whatever position we were looking for. We weren't checking off boxes or anything like that. And just by focusing on that, it created a very diverse organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, I'm a big believer in building bridges of unity and prosperity. So when you look at the world today, how do you think we can do that more effectively and bring people closer together?
By talking, having conversations with people that may not look like you, people who you may think you don't identify with. But if you actually just sit down and have a conversation and listen, I think you'll understand that we all have a lot more in common than what we don't. And it's a shame that we live in the type of world we live in right now, where the media focuses on all of our differences and wants to bring all that sort of stuff out. But truly, if you sit down and have conversations with individuals, I think you're going to find a lot more people in the world that you have a lot more in common with than what you don't. And you may not have everything in common with them, But there's enough there to create a connection and be able to then identify them as a fellow human being, as opposed to, oh, this guy is a Republican, or this guy is a Democrat, or this guy is black and this guy is white, or, this person's gay or whatever. Like, just have the conversation, identify with them as a human being first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dad, I'm curious to ask you, what do you think is the greatest professional lesson you've learned that you've tried to apply to your personal life over the years?
I think just to keep getting up after you fall. Every time you fall down, just get back up and keep walking, and put one foot in front of the other. I just happened to participate in a 20-mile hike the other day, and it was doing that hike was really kind of a metaphor of life. Toward the end, the last 3 or 4 miles, your body was hurting, but it was just one step in front of the other. And my niece did it with me, and her knees were bothering her. And again, it was just one step, and then the next step, and then the next step. And I just think that's, really the key to be successful in, business and life, is no matter what's dealt to you, just get back up and keep moving forward.
Put one foot in front of the other, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then where are some places that you haven't been that you're anxious to get to, buddy?
Definitely want to get to Alaska. We've been in Oregon. We have not been to the Oregon coast yet, which we understand is beautiful. We were in New England in the fall, but we didn't spend enough time there, so we want to get back up into New England and Maine especially. And again, there's so many. We've been doing it for over 2 years, and we've just scratched the surface. I mean, we've gotten to 39 states so far in the U.S., but again, so many of them we've just scratched the surface. And I think that list of where we want to go is still pretty long at this point. we're still figuring it out. I mean, every day it's like, oh, here's another place we got to add to the list. And I don't know that we'll ever complete the list, to be honest with you, because it just, you check 2 places off and you add 3 more.
Absolutely. It's ever evolving, isn't it?
Sure is.
And then I have to tell you, if you're so I live in Canada, buddy. So if you're ever north of the border, you have to look me up so we can have lunch together. I'd love to do it.
Definitely will, and that's been something where, man, there's probably been 5 or 6 people that we've met this way, either by hosting them on my podcast or me being on their podcast, and then we've been able to connect in person. And that, again, is one of those fulfilling things, just like when we connect with players. It happened just last week. We were out in Indiana, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I was on a show called Good Podcasting. And the host there, Brian Biedenbach, we'd mentioned, just like you said now, like, if you're ever in the area, look me up. And, we were in his area, and we got together and spent a couple hours together and just had a great time. So, mark my word, if we get in your neighborhood, we will definitely look you up, without a doubt.
Absolutely. I'm going to hold you to that, buddy. And my final question for you this morning has to do with your own personal and professional legacy and how you want that to be defined.
That's something I think that, as you get older, you start thinking about more and more. And my definition of it has probably changed, even just over the past couple of years since we've been doing this, because I think we truly probably leave thousands of different legacies for every person that we meet. So I don't think any of us are really defined by one single legacy. And I think it comes down to a quote that I put at the signature lines of all of my emails from Jackie Robinson, which says, "Life is defined by its impact on other lives." And I think truly, my legacy is individualized to every person I've ever interacted with in my life. So what my overall legacy would be is that the majority of those individual legacies with those singular people are more positive than negative. That's what I hope for at the end of my life, that I leave more positive legacies with others than negative legacies.
Yeah, it's all about paying it forward, isn't it?
Sure is. It sure is.
And then if people want to get connected with you, buddy, what's the best way they can do that?
Best way is pretty much everything's on my website. And I have two URLs. It's journeyofmymotherson.com. Or if you don't want to type out all those letters, you can just type in danclouser.com. They both go to the exact same area. Everything about me is on there. You can get books on there, find episodes of my podcast, my blogs. And if anybody out there wants to book me for speaking engagements, there's a link there for speaking engagements. And I also have a media link where any podcast that I've been a guest on is there, so they can go in and check out this interview once it's published, or any of the others that I've done. So just danclouser.com or journeyofmymotherson.com. Everything about Dan Clouser you can find there, right there.
Fantastic. Well, Dan, as an old current sports junkie, I really enjoyed this conversation about live sports and everything in between, buddy. You work in the space, and your inspirational story is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this conversation as well.